Late last month, the province received the final report of its special advisor on recycling and plastic waste. It offered several recommendations aimed at an overhaul that puts producers in charge of managing blue box waste. With us now for more, Jeff Yurek, Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, and MPP for Alged, Middlesex, London. Hi, it's nice to meet you.
Great to meet you.
And especially nice since you're coming from my hometown of London, Ontario.
Yeah, it's a great part of Ontario.
So why does Ontario's Blue Bin program need to be revamped?
Well, last fall we put out our Made in Ontario Environment Plan, and part of that plan was dealing with litter waste and our landfills and plastics. So after doing a review, we found that the recycling program isn't accomplishing what Ontarians think it is accomplishing, and had David Lindsay do a special report that was released a few weeks ago. But basically what's come forward is that recycling is stagnant in this province. Up to 70% of our garbage is still going to the garbage. It's not being diverted into recycling.
Is it 30%?
Well,
up to 30%?
30%, yeah, is getting recycled. But the interesting part is, in the blue box itself, 30% of what's put in that blue box ends up in the landfill anyways. So there's something amiss with our recycling program. It's not delivering the results that average Ontarians would think would be delivered. So it's time to make a change, and it's time to move to reduce the plastics in our landfills.
And there's something that Mr. Lindsay repeatedly says in the report, is that this is a very complex issue. So do you have a timeline on how you want to make these changes?
Well, we're not going to do them quickly. I think municipalities have been difficulty dealing with the recycling program since it started. I know they've been asking for years upon years for change. We're going to continue our consultations with the producers, who we are going to move the cost of the program to the producers. We're going to deal with municipalities on what's the best way forward, and also deal with Ontarians. The main part we want to get across to people is those having a blue box program today won't notice a difference in their pickup of their recyclables, only that they'll be able to put more in, and they'll know what can go in the blue box.
I want to talk more about the report itself.
Sure.
So we find out in this report that at least 30% of what we think is being recycled is actually ending up in the landfill. And your ministry commissioned this report, and it highlights the fact that, we believe that, quote, when we put something in the blue box, that they're reducing litter and waste and improving the environment. Why isn't that happening right now?
Well, there's a number of factors. One, they could put the wrong item into a blue box, which contaminates the box, so it can't go further in recycling, whether it's dirty or it's just the wrong item. Number two, there's 240 different recycling programs in this province. So to keep track of what goes in the box is quite confusing to people. I remember my mom tried to recycle, but it was just too confusing. Do you have to clean this? Can this go in there? Cannot? She always said, forget it, I'm not going to recycle.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, because we have this graph up. So depending on, and we're going to call this a coffee cup dilemma, depending on where you're living, we have the municipality, the paper cup, and the plastic lid, and these go into different places. So if you live in Hamilton, that paper cup would go into the green bin, and the plastic lid would go into the garbage. If you live in Burlington, it's green bin, and then the plastic lid goes into the blue box. If you live in Mississauga, the paper cup goes into the garbage, and the plastic lid also goes into the garbage. And here in Toronto, the paper cup goes into the garbage, and then the blue box, because black plastic is not accepted. And then if you live in Markham, the paper cup goes into the blue box, and the plastic lid goes into the garbage, which is so confusing. Why is it set up like this?
Because the municipalities were in charge of the program. So each municipality set out what was best for their communities and what they could recycle. Unfortunately, that obviously doesn't work. You get a mismatch of what can go in the blue box. So standardizing it is probably one of the key points of going forward with this program. So everyone knows what goes in the blue box and what can be recycled.
I live in Mississauga, I work in Toronto, and I've been doing it all wrong. Could this be one of the reasons why so much of what we recycle ends up in the landfill?
It's probably one of the reasons. And the other one I mentioned was contamination, where you didn't properly wash, because certain recycling agents only take clean plastic or tin cans, or what have you. So it's a number of things. The other is cost. I mean, municipalities pay approximately 50%. Stewardship Ontario, through the producers, pay the other 50%. There's only so much that a municipality can do with that amount of money. So
And this system was set up in the 1980s, right?
It first started in Kitchener, Ontario in the early 1980s, and over time it developed into a province-wide program, although not every community does have a Blue Box program.
And obviously, since then, we are using different plastics. We're using different, maybe items that were not maybe on that list back in the 1980s. Is that another reason?
Yeah, sure. I mean, printed paper was probably the number one recyclable, and then there was tin cans, pop cans, et cetera. But now, we've moved to a whole different type of packaging. Different types of plastics are now available. And I think at that time, the producers of this waste, this plastic, had no incentive to actually make changes to make their products more recyclable or more user-friendly in the circular economy that we want to create. So that I think that was one of the major problems. So moving from a municipal pay and control half of it to a producer control and entirely pay for the system will incentivize them to change the way they package material.
By that, I'm guessing that you mean that you can use a plastic for one thing, but then it can have like another life as something else?
Certainly. I mean, yeah, that's the way it is to reuse, repurpose that plastic into some other form. But also, the producers of the plastic can now start changing what product they're creating. They can use recyclable materials. They could use use products that are easier recyclable, and then they create the system in order to have those products reintegrated back into our economy.
Why has the secondary market for our plastic waste collapsed?
Well, the main reason China has really drastically reduced accepting our plastics. They put a lot of provisions. They really want it cleaned up. So therefore, the market is mainly being driven offshores. And again, I refer back to this report. If we move the responsibility to the producers on the recyclable product, at the end of the day, I believe there's going to be aftermarket growth in those economies to create a recycling industry within Ontario, because the incentive will be there for those businesses to expand.
Well, we've mentioned that one of the findings, and probably the primary finding in this report, is that up to 30% of what goes in the blue bins ends up in a landfill. Where are the landfills that this waste is ending up in?
Well, municipalities have their various landfills throughout the province. Toronto's landfill is actually in my riding in Southold, Ontario. So I mean, the product is getting into our landfills, and as it breaks down and degrades, creates methane gas, which is a more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. So it's not a win for the environment to continue to have plastics getting into our landfill. We want to reduce that almost to zero as we go forward.
I know people don't like the idea of the recycling ending up on landfills, but is it possible that something ending up in the landfill does less harm to the environment than being shipped somewhere overseas?
I've heard some economists have that discussion that it's better for just to let the plastic go to landfill as opposed to the greenhouse gases and the environmental footprint that's created to ship offshore. However, I think that would be a way to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and in the fact that you could actually put the management of the Blue Box system and the cost onto the producers, which will incentivize them to decrease their packaging, but also hopefully create a new economy within the recycling business within Ontario and stir that up. So,
but isn't that what they tried to do before, was to create an economy with recycling, having an industry?
They did do that, but however, the producers had no control of the system. It was municipal controlled. Producers pay basically 50% of the cost. So if the producers have no control over what is produced in the recycling and what the end product are, then it would be pretty hard to create a consistent product in order to have a recycling program. So if we move the costs and the control over to the producers, as I said before, they'll create a recyclable product that can be reused in the system, and that should create a recycling industry. I'm not one for saying get rid of the recycling program, just throw everything in the landfill. I don't think that's a solution. I don't think landfills are our solution down the road, and at least we can do is start to minimize plastics in our landfills.
I know the ideal would be to have 100% of everything that we put for recycling gets recycled.
Sure.
But if we're talking about up to 30% ends up in the landfill, that means that 70% is getting recycled. Doesn't that mean that recycling is, it's actually helping?
It's helping to a certain extent, but I mean, my daughter goes to school, and I'm not happy with 70% in her courses. I like to see her get a little bit higher, and I think we should have programs in Ontario that achieve the best possible target we can achieve. If it's plateaued at 70%, to me, the system needs some fixing, and that's what we're going to be doing with the recycling program in Ontario, so that at the end of the day, maybe we can hit higher targets and divert that much more plastic from hitting our landfills.
And we've also heard that, sometimes the stuff ends up in the landfill because it's been contaminated.
Right.
Why is contamination such a big issue?
Well, I mean, if certain recycle, like China has pulled back because there's added cost to clean the product before you head it to recycle, and/or it could contaminate the different types of plastics that could be recycled. So the more we can do with regards to letting people know what can be recycled, letting the industry design a product that can be recycled, the better results we'll have at the end of the day, the less chance we'll have for contamination or having to sort so much at that end, and that should reduce costs and hopefully stimulate this economy.
Could an initial step be to make sure that people know how to clean their recyclables or what should go in the bin?
I think everybody wants to be part of the recycling. I think we all feel bad if we don't recycle. So we'd like to do it right. So let's make it as simple as possible. And that's part of standardizing the product going forward. And we'll have an educational program on that once the product is standardized, then how to recycle and how to do it properly.
When the Blue Bin program began, at least in Toronto, the glass bottles and tins were separated from the paper stream. But then we moved to a system where we now recycle them together. Do you think that was a mistake?
I think that's up to the recycling industry. I toured a recycling plant up in Muskoka just last week, and the system they developed to separating plastics and the plastic bottles and the tin cans is just using a magnet. It separates quite easily. So I don't know if that's a mistake, but I think the key to that was the fact that municipalities were controlling what was going in the recycling box and what fit best for that municipality and sort of sorting or getting rid of their recycled products. Again, I think if we go back to the producers controlling the system, the development of how the recycling will happen, I think we'll get the best mix on how to recycle our product.
Well, this report says that there is a consensus among municipalities and producers, which is that producers of packaging waste should be responsible for the disposal and recycling of that packaging, right?
Right.
How would that change the system as it stands right now?
Well, right now the system is set up, the municipalities pay up to 50% of the cost, maybe it goes up to 60%. They control what is recycled, how it's recycled, the pickup, and where it gets shipped off. Stewardship Ontario, through fees through the producers, pay the other portion, 50%. So the way it's going to flip now is municipalities, the taxpayers of municipalities will have a savings because they won't have that cost anymore on the recycling program. The producers will be paying for and controlling the recycling system.
I mean, I hear, because I think one of the things that people might be worried about is that what would stop the producers from transferring that cost to consumers?
Well, I think there's a number of items. Certainly, we'll have those conversations with them. But I think industry producers are into saving money with their way they operate their businesses. I think that's ongoing.
But the cost is always transferred somewhere.
Well, you know what? The industry is probably going to change to how their products are packaged, what packaging they do use. And that will reduce the cost in that system because they'll change to make it a recyclable product, or they use recyclable materials in their product. And at the other end of the day, they're also going to be continuing that recycling industry, which will be another offshoot possibly for income. I don't see much of any change at all with the cost being downloaded to individuals. I honestly see industry working to make it a better, more efficient system, which at the end of the day should cost less.
But what would motivate producers? Because it sounds like they're going to be shouldering everything else. What's going to motivate them to create products that are easier to recycle and also to make sure that the end product is also disposed of safely?
Well, I mean, we will be transferring that responsibility to them to follow through. But I mean, I think producers, you speak to Loblaws and Walmart and other large producers, they want to do better for the environment, and I think they'll step forward with ensuring that those.
But why aren't they
products
doing it now?
Well, I think they're doing what they can within the marketplace, but they can't do it now because the municipality is setting what's in the blue box. There's no incentive, and they don't know how to get the right packaging for Toronto, but then Mississauga recycles something else, so they have to change their packaging. There's no standardization of what goes in a blue box. And this is a way to get it so that industry knows how they want to package the material, present the material, market the material, so that it is recyclable. And
But
so
what
they don't
about
have to guess.
foreign companies? How would that work?
Well, I mean, we'll have to deal with that as we go through with our consultations. It's early, as I said, we have more
Would you be regulating?
Well, we're going to have a recycling program in this province. Right now, we have, as I said, Walmart and Loblaws. Walmart's an American company, and they're right on board to do what needs to be done in this province of Ontario. Loblaws is national. So,
do you worry that they might go to other provinces where they don't have to deal with this?
Not at all. I think we have 14 million people in this province, which are consumers, which they want to sell their goods to. We also, I believe, they are more socially, environmentally conscious and want to do the right thing. And this is really a great win for them. It's a win for us, and it's a win for municipalities.
So if the municipalities are going to be stepping away from the recycling system, will the provincial government be regulating the new system, or do you see industry regulating itself?
No, we'll be overseeing to make sure they're reaching the targets they have to reach, and
if they don't,
with
would
them.
you tax them, or?
Well, we'll have to see how those consultations go as we develop this process going forward. But there will be some oversight on the provincial side of things, and municipalities with the money they save, hopefully they can invest in their own infrastructure. That I know in rural Ontario it's tough to get a bridge built, and hopefully they have more money to spend on that type of stuff.
Is there any possibility that part of that plan will include incineration of hard to recycle products and then capturing the energy from incineration for electricity?
I haven't really gone down that path yet. I know there's mixed messages on incineration. I know a lot of Europe still does incineration, and I know there's a big push in North America not to do incineration. So we're focusing right now on fixing the recycling side of the pickup and the sorting and creating a new economy. But we're definitely open to looking at everything. But as I said, that's nothing that's crossed our table yet.
Is there anyone doing what you want to do now, like British Columbia, or?
No. I was at the Minister Environment meeting at the end of June with Minister McKenna. And we're all trying to go to the same route. We had a zero plastic waste agreement between the provinces. Ontario is probably the leading way with putting the full costs onto the producer. The other provinces are heading down that path, maybe not for the entirety that we're pushing for. Like Saskatchewan has its own bottling, recycling industry set up itself. It doesn't really want to touch that. But basically, all the provinces and territories seem to be on the same path, but we're leading the way.
Minister, thank you so much for making some time for us
Thanks
to clarify what's been happening with the Lindsay report.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.